She did it over eggs. Sunday morning, quiet kitchen, radio low. I was spreading jam like I was diffusing something, and Megan said, "That little click you do after coffee, it's juvenile." 10 years married, and that's where she chose to plant the flag. Not money, not loyalty. A sound. I laughed once the way a guy laughs when he registers a warning light and pretends it's the gas cap. I moved the mug aside. No click. She watched like a referee. The yolks broke easy. So did something else. Here's what men my age don't say out loud. Disrespect never starts with fireworks. It shows up with a fork, in daylight, like it belongs. You want to know how a house tips? Not from a storm, from a steady leak nobody fixes. In 60 minutes, I'll show you where that leak began, why I canceled a room full of smiles, and how paperwork became a power tool. But first, listen. After breakfast, I drove to the grocery store in quiet, the kind of Sunday traffic where signals stay green longer than you'd expect. At checkout, the kid bagging my item said, "Have a good one," with that polite, hopeful tone people have when they're new at life. I took a sip of coffee, made the little click out of habit, just to test something. Megan's jaw tightened like a wrench, meeting resistance. It wasn't the noise. It never was. It was the principle of who gets to decide what's acceptable inside our walls. On the ride home, the radio mumbled baseball scores. And I pretended to care. We'd been married a decade. I could read her silence the way you read a weather map. High pressure, low warmth. By the time we unloaded the bags, I knew the lesson. Disrespect rarely shows up with sirens. It drifts in with small rules. The climax was simple. She'd drawn a line. I felt it under my feet. Back home, I opened my laptop and checked bids for a kitchen remodel. Numbers, notes, timelines, the kind of order that keeps a job site standing. A drawer slammed. Megan was hunting a whisk that lives exactly where it always lives. "You hide things in plain sight," she said, like it was a diagnosis. I glanced at the drawer, and sure enough, the whisk was there. I said, "You're free to move it." She said, "That's not the point. You put things back where you want them. It's controlling." I thought about 10 years of putting screws back in labeled bins. Not because I'm a tyrant, but because later I want to find the screw. Men my age understand this. Order is kindness to your future self. The air in the kitchen thickened like humidity before a storm. The climax came when I didn't argue. I let the charge float. In construction, not every rattle gets a wrench. Sometimes you mark the noise and keep building. I brewed another pot instead of an apology. In earlier years, I would have chased the conversation, searched for the perfect sentence that turned smoke into air. This time, I just let the filter drip. I kept my mouth still. No click. No jokes. No, maybe you're right. You reach an age where you realize explanations don't heal a wound made from seeking control. They just feed the appetite. I looked at the mug and thought about how many times I'd sanded myself down to fit. I decided to stop sanding. I took my coffee to the back steps and felt the boards flex. The neighborhood was calm, sprinklers ticking, a dog 2 houses over announcing a squirrel. I thought, calm isn't the same as peace. Calm is quiet that hasn't been tested yet. The climax was private and boring and necessary. I chose not to fix it. Sometimes the most radical act a man can pull off is to refuse the bait and keep his morning. I called my foreman and said, "Cancel wine night at our place. If folks ask, I'm closing bids." He chuckled. "You just took a night back." I could hear nail guns in the background and felt more at home with that racket than the clink of crystal. For years, Thursday evenings meant I played bartender while Megan curated conversation. I'd smile, pour, and nod through debates about sweaters and oat milk like we were resolving a labor dispute. Not this week. I wrote it on a sticky note. Thew, mine, and stuck it on the fridge like a permit. That small square of paper felt like a deed. Men around my age will understand. You don't get time back unless you take it. The climax arrived with a tight, clean click in my head. The sound a tape measure makes when it locks. A straight line. A clear edge. There'd be pushback, sure. But for once, I'd made a change without asking permission. Dinner came with the usual salad and the unusual announcement. Megan said, "Jenna texted, she's excited for tomorrow." I forked lettuce and said, "Let her know it's off." She blinked like I'd switched the gravity in the room. "You canceled without asking me." I said, It's at our place, and I'm the one who ends up washing glasses. She laughed once, dry as a paper towel. Since when do you act unilaterally? I said, since breakfast. The word landed between us like a tool dropped from a ladder. Harmless, loud, impossible to ignore. She opened her mouth to stack complaints, the tone, the audacity, the change, but chose, "You've changed." I said, "Mostly I click less." You could feel the kitchen recalibrate. Older folks know this moment. The first time you enforce a boundary is never elegant. The climax wasn't a slam or a speech. It was the calm in my chest after I didn't backpedal. I ate. She stared. The plates got heavy. I cleaned up quietly and waited for the old script to cue. A sigh, a speech, a summit meeting about my personality. It didn't come. Instead, Megan stood there taking inventory. My face, my posture, my new habit of not filling silences with fixes. "You're different," she said, testing every syllable for weakness. "Good, different?" I asked. "Stubborn," she answered. "Clarity," I said back. Men my age rarely advertise it, but there's a point where being agreeable starts to feel like lying. I dried the last glass and set it down gently, like proof of life. She wanted me to ask for permission to be steady. I wanted to see what happened if I didn't. The house listened. The climax was quiet again. She ran out of lines. I didn't supply new ones. We stood in the same kitchen, same floor, same light, and somehow it was a different map. For once, I didn't apologize for knowing where the edges were. Monday morning, Mrs. Alvarez walked her terrier past the driveway and waved like neighbors do when they know just enough to care. "You two coming to the block party?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "Bring those ribs," she smiled. "I'll bring them quiet," I joked, and she laughed without needing a briefing. That's the grace of good neighbors. They read the room without opening doors that aren't theirs. Back inside, I heard Megan on speaker with Lauren. Tones, names, the soft click of alliances. I set my keys down and thought about ordinary rituals. Grills, coolers, lawn chairs. In every street, there's a jury of 10 folding tables. Older men know this pressure, pretending your house is fine because the potato salad is. The climax came with a simple realization. I wasn't obligated to perform. If I brought ribs, I'd bring them as myself, not as a prop. If I stayed home, that was allowed too. The terrier barked twice, like punctuation. The garage is where I think straight. Sawhorses don't take things personally. I put a drill to a stubborn hinge and let the noise drown out the invisible ones. That door had squeaked for months. I'd kept saying I'd get to it. Marriage can be like that. Little sounds you live with until the whole frame leans. I checked the plumb, ran a level, made the fix. In the middle of it, I caught a thought. If I can't be respected in my own kitchen, I'll at least be respected by my tools. Men 30 to 65 know the sermon here. Get your hands on something solid when your head wants to run. The climax wasn't heroic. The squeak died. The hinge settled. And I admitted to myself that the creak I really heard wasn't the door. It was us. Once you say that out loud, even to a pile of 2x4s, it's hard to unsay it. The drill whirred down. The truth didn't. That night, lights low, sheets cool, Megan said into the dark, "You breathe loud." I said, "That's called being alive." She offered a sleep study like a coupon. I offered a laugh that didn't land. Men our age know the midnight negotiations. Choose the joke or choose the fight. I chose the ceiling. The room's HVAC kicked on, and the air turned hotel cold. For years, I would have rolled over and promised to work on existing. This time, I didn't move. I let the silence do its job. The climax arrived with a simple inventory. I wasn't angry. I wasn't defensive. I was done pretending that comfort equals respect. Somewhere, a neighbor's sprinklers hissed on timer. Inside, ours did too. The cycle where every day gets watered with the same complaint. I closed my eyes and pictured a pencil line on drywall, the place you mark before a cut. I didn't know when I'd cut. I knew the line was real. I canceled wine night, simple as pulling a plug. Megan stood in the doorway with that accountant look, tallying my nerve. "Since when do you act alone?" she asked. "Since breakfast," I said, and watched the number land. Men my age know that tone. Half disbelief, half summons back to the old rules. I didn't step forward. I let the silence tell her I meant it. 10 years of checking in over little things had turned into asking permission to breathe. Today, I put air back in my lungs. She waited for me to soften, like I always had. I didn't. The climax arrived without a raised voice. I stayed where I stood. A clean decision, no committee. Later, I wrote the plan on the fridge calendar. Big X through Thursday, like closing a lane for repairs. Megan stared at the marker stroke as if it were graffiti. Maybe it was. Either way, the wall belonged to both of us, and I'd claimed my square. Tuesday morning, I changed routes on purpose. Started early, finished early. No drifting into that tired hour where I became furniture while she entertained. Traffic was kind. Coffee wasn't. I drank it black anyway and let the quiet of dawn do its work. Older men get this. Choosing your start time is choosing your mood. By lunchtime, I'd ticked off enough tasks to feel like myself. I texted Chris to confirm Saturday plans, not asking, just stating. The phone stayed face down after. I drove home a different way, past the ball fields where dads were chalking lines. There's comfort in straight edges freshly drawn. I pulled into the driveway and felt my shoulders drop. The climax was small but real. My day had my fingerprints again. When Megan asked, "Where were you?" I said, "Working early, finishing early," and walked to the garage like a man using his own door. She followed, but slower, noticing I wasn't waiting on her weather. That afternoon, she came downstairs with tea like a truce flag. "I'm stressed," she said, settling next to me on the couch as if we were resuming a paused show. "Work, Jenna's stuff, my sister moving." I nodded. Men my age know this dance, when empathy gets used as a crowbar. "I know you help," she added, shoulder angled into mine. "I appreciate you." Good words. True words sometimes. I took a sip. Chamomile, my favorite. "We could compromise," she said lightly. "Keep wine night. You keep your Saturday thing." The pitch was gentle, practiced. I heard what she meant. Go back to the old rhythm, just rename it. I set the mug down and let the steam thin. The climax was refusing the trade. "We can host quarterly," I said. "Clear lanes, no drift." Her smile cooled a degree. She wanted me pliable. I wanted structure. And for once my want didn't apologize before it spoke. "Quarterly," she repeated, eyebrows rising like garage doors. "Winter for you," I said. "Summer for me. Spring and fall. We breathe." She did the mental math, counting holidays I'd just emptied of obligation. "That's extreme," she said, meaning inconvenient. I kept my voice even. "It's a calendar. Older adults understand this better than anyone. If it's not on the calendar, it's wishful thinking." We'd lived years in the gray between favors and guilt. I was painting lines. She tried a softer angle. "What about spontaneity?" I said, "We can be spontaneous inside the lanes." The climax arrived as a shift in posture. Mine stayed open, hers closed by half. Not a win exactly, but a post set. That evening, I wrote the 4 dates on an index card and left it by the fruit bowl. Bananas spot, boundaries don't. When I turned off the kitchen light, the card glowed faintly in the street lamp, a small bright sign that something had changed. At work, Denise waved me into her office with that steel-toe kindness she does. "You look like you slept in the truck," she said, smiling without sugar. I shrugged. "Home's noisy," I answered, which was truer than it sounded. She leaned back. "You want off the Miller job? Tom can run point." I shook my head. "I've got it." She studied me the way good supervisors do, checking more than schedule. "You've been solid for years," she said. "Fix what needs fixing before it walks onto a site." Older men will hear the subtext. Don't bring your house fire to the scaffold. The climax was her trust, paired with a warning. I took both. On the way out, I tightened the plan. Clean handoffs, clear hours, no half working on the couch with TV laughter trying to glue me together. Back in the truck, I sat a minute and breathed. If respect couldn't live in my kitchen, it would at least thrive on my clipboard. I went home and made the garage a border. When I worked, I was inside with the door down. When I sat with Megan, I was present on purpose. No blurring. Men 30 to 65 know why. Blurred time turns into resentments nobody can file. I hung a cheap clock by the workbench and set a timer on my phone. 90 minutes on, 10 off. The round buzz felt like a whistle at a job site. Inside, Megan called from the hallway. "Are you busy?" "Until the timer," I said calmly. The old me would have opened the door like a dog at a bell. Not today. I planned, cut, and swept. The climax came when I stopped in the off 10, opened the door, and asked, "What do you need?" Not defensive, not apologetic, just clear. She blinked at the difference, then said, "Nothing." I nodded and closed the door gently. Boundaries don't have to slam. Sometimes they hum steady as a compressor. By Friday evening, the block party woke up the cul-de-sac, folding tables, coolers, kids racing scooters without brakes worth mentioning. Mrs. Alvarez waved her spatula. "You two okay?" she asked, neighbor soft, eyes kind. "We're fine," I said, the universal answer for not yet. She leaned in. "She didn't smile at your joke," she whispered, like a weather report. I nodded. It happens. Older folks know communities take your temperature without a thermometer. We moved to the grill, and I basted ribs by habit, watching the sauce bubble at the edges. Megan arrived with a plate and the right laugh for public use. The climax was a brief truth from Mrs. Alvarez. "Good for you. Men never claim time." And the way Megan's smile thinned when she heard it. In that second, I realized people could see the shift even if we didn't announce it. The meat needed another minute. So did the marriage. I closed the lid and let heat work where words wouldn't. Megan slid closer, voice turned low and friendly enough to sting. "He's impossible," she told Mrs. Alvarez, eyes on me, tone for the audience. Mrs. Alvarez didn't blink. "He's decisive," she said. "Different thing." It landed like a level on a bent board, showing the warp without argument. Men my age know how rare that is. A neighbor calling a thing by its name. Megan's smile tightened as if she tasted lemon. I didn't gloat. I brushed sauce, kept my hands moving, kept my mouth from volunteering peace. The climax was restraint. Not because I couldn't spar, but because I'd finally understood the terms. I wasn't applying for a job I already had. Husband, not hostage. We made the rounds, or tried. Conversation slid off us like rain on good siding. Back at the grill, I checked the ribs and decided they were done. You pull meat when it's ready, not when someone else's calendar says so. Same rule, different kitchen. We went home with leftovers and a silence that rode shotgun. Inside, the house sounded like a waiting room. Too clean, too bright. Magazines nobody reads. Megan rinsed dishes with the focus of a surgeon. I wiped the counter in straight lines, a habit I've had since my first rental with a bad landlord and worse lighting. Older adults will get it. Order is a way to slow the spin. "You enjoying this?" she asked finally. "Enjoying what?" I said. "Being difficult." I set the towel down. "I'm being clear." The line hung there like a bridge we hadn't built. The climax arrived when neither of us crossed it. No lecture, no late-night summit about my tone. Just concrete quiet. It weighed more than an argument. In that weight, I felt both cost and relief. You don't change a house without dust. We turned off lights we didn't need and went to bed like coworkers after a long shift. Civil, tired, separate. Sunday, she bought ribs from the place I like, set the table with the good chargers, dimmed the room to flattering. The dress was the summer porch one. She poured me a beer and said, "I miss you," soft enough to make a weaker version of me melt. I took a bite and let smoke and pepper do their steady work. "These are good," I said. "I miss these ribs." Her eyes flashed, then steadied. Men 30 1080. To 65 know that brink. When kindness is currency, and you're supposed to trade your boundaries for a warm evening. I didn't. I offered civility, not surrender. "We can be good without being blind," I said. She lifted her glass, testing if that counted as peace. I clinked it, testing if mine could stay intact. The climax was balance. Share the meal, keep the line. When the plates were empty, the room was still calm. Calm, not peace. But for once, calm didn't feel like a trap. 2 quiet days passed, the kind that feel rented, not owned. Tuesday night, Megan came in from yoga with her hair still damp and said, "Lauren needs a hand hanging a mirror. We should go now." I checked the time. 6 sharp. When I'd told Chris I'd be at his garage to tune the carb on the old bike. I said, "I already made plans." She tilted her head like a nurse hearing a new symptom. "So cancel." I shook mine. "I gave my word." She set a seltzer on the counter a little too firmly. "It's a mirror, Jack." I said, "It's a promise." Older folks know this split. A small task that isn't small at all because of what it costs. I grabbed my keys and felt that tiny lift in my chest that says you're standing up even if no one claps. The climax arrived at the doorknob. I turned it without asking permission and felt the hinge bless the choice. She followed me to the entryway, voice low, controlled. "So you're choosing your buddy over your wife?" The old me would have panicked at the framing and sprinted to fix the headline. This version kept it simple. "I'm choosing the words I already said," I answered. "We can help Lauren tomorrow." Her eyes sharpened. "You're being noble," she said, like it was a costume I'd put on wrong. "I'm being on time." I said backmen 30 to 65 will recognize the trap. Make it about loyalty so you won't notice it's really about control. I opened the door. She gave me the look that used to stop me. It didn't. The climax was the latch clicking, not as a slam but as a boundary made of brass and habit. I left the house without heat in my throat. The streetlights were on, and for the first time in a while they felt like markers, not warnings. I drove to Chris's. Chris had the bike half apart when I pulled in, elbows greasy, music too loud in the best way. He didn't look up. "Define good," he said, as if we'd been mid-sentence for a year. I told him the short version. He wiped his hands and grunted. "You used to be a carpet," he said. "Now you're a hardwood floor. Just don't become a wall." I laughed. "I'm aiming for a door with a lock." He nodded once. "Fair. Older men hear the wisdom in that. Sturdy doesn't mean closed. It means you control the hinge. We tuned, we tested, the engine coughed, then cleared its throat like an old baritone remembering the note. The climax came when the idle settled steady, a sound you can trust. We killed the noise and let the quiet earn its keep. "Text me if the house goes weird," he said. "It's already weird," I answered. "Good," he said. "Weird is honest." I drove home smelling like fuel and permission. Midweek, Megan changed tactics. Less nitpicking, more distance. She came home later, moved quieter, set her phone face down like a portable curtain. We talked logistics, trash day, dog hair, the bill that got double charged, but not the weather inside the walls. I did the same. I kept my hours clean, my garage door schedule predictable, my answers shorter than a speech, but longer than a grunt. Men my age know this stalemate. Two people circling the same living room, both unwilling to blink first. It's not war. It's a truce no one signed. The climax was noticing how comfortable I felt not chasing resolution. Comfort isn't always peace, but it beats performing. I slept better, worked sharper, said fewer words that bought me nothing. Megan noticed too. Sometimes the sound in a house isn't voices. It's the absence of the old scramble. We ate, we cleaned, we watched the 10 o'clock news without comment. Two witnesses to a quiet that felt practiced. One night she tried nostalgia as a key. "We used to try new restaurants," she said, scrolling past 3 of them on her phone. "You hate waiting for tables," I reminded her. "We could make reservations," she countered. "Sure, pick a place." She frowned. "You pick?" "Tall Pine," I said. "You said you liked it." As nose wrinkle. "Too rustic." I nodded. "Then you pick." She sighed. "You only know plans, not me." That one landed like a hammer on the wrong nail. Men 30 out of 65 have heard versions of it, turned structure into a character flaw so any boundary looks like neglect. I kept my voice level. "I know our calendar. I'm trying to know what you actually want." The climax wasn't dramatic. It was the moment she left the room without answering. If there's no preference, there's no compromise. Later, I made a short list of places and dates anyway. Clarity can hold the door open. It can't make someone walk through. After that, I started noticing the architecture of her sentences. Every line had scaffolding, a goal, a lever, a fallback. "We never go anywhere," tied to "you pick," tied to "I don't like that." Efficient, exhausting. Men my age develop a sixth sense for where a conversation wants to put you. I didn't want to live in a corner. I also didn't want to fight. So I wrote what I knew on a notepad. Work clean, speak plain, don't sell your time twice. I tucked the note in my wallet like a permit. The climax came during a small exchange about where the mail sits. She angled for "you don't listen." I answered with "I heard you," then did exactly what I'd said I would do. No flourish, no sigh. The world didn't break. Neither did I. It's strange how powerful simple follow-through feels when you've spent years cushioning everything. A steady no can sound like kindness when you quit apologizing for it. Her birthday rolled up soft as a weather front. Small party, warm lights, backyard chairs that have seen a few seasons. I grilled because that's where I'm useful. Fire, timing, a plate ready when someone asks, "You mind?" Tom showed with his fiancée. Mrs. Alvarez brought a salad that could feed a high school, and Lauren came with a bright laugh. Megan likes to wear like jewelry. The jokes were easy, the stories polished. You could feel the house exhale because company makes everybody pretend. Men who host know the drill. Feed people, keep the edges smooth, count forks at the end. The climax was the first true laugh I'd seen from Megan in weeks. It hit like a postcard from an earlier year. I let myself enjoy it, but only as a guest. That's the trick I'd learned. Receive the good. Don't mortgage your peace for it. The meat sizzled, the lid closed, and for a moment we were just neighbors again. Someone asked how we met, and I told it straight. No seasoning. Fall festival, guess the candy corn jar. I wanted a clue. She told me to beat it. I guessed anyway and won a mug I still used on rainy days. I asked her out. She said she was busy until 2045. I kept showing up. She thawed the night her power went out, and my generator hummed like a cat too proud to admit it wanted company. Folks laughed because the beats were true and simple. I didn't act heroic. I acted persistent. Older couples nodded the way people do when they see a road they've walked. The climax was the warmth that gathered without effort. Eyes soft, shoulders loose, plates paused midair. For a minute, the story did what stories do. It made us kinder. I glanced at Megan and saw the version of her I respected standing close enough to touch. I flipped the ribs and kept my mouth humble. Then Megan reached for the joke. "Honestly," she said, breezy like a weather app, "if I'd had a shot, I probably should have gone back to my ex." The patio didn't laugh. Ice knocked a glass like a bell. Even the grill sound changed, quieter somehow. Older adults know that feeling when a party shifts on one sentence. I felt my face dim without effort, like a room losing power. She tried to patch it. "Kidding," she said too fast. No one bought it. In 10 years, I've been late, wrong, and stubborn, but I've never been a punchline I didn't write. The climax was a decision I didn't rehearse. I set the tongs down with care as if they were hot, and I respected the heat. I looked at our people, neighbors, coworkers, the ones who help you move a couch without keeping score. Then I looked at her and saw the truth I'd been dodging. "Take a chair." "You'll get that shot," I said, voice steady enough to sign papers with. "Tomorrow." Not loud, not cruel, clear. The patio parted the way crowds do when they're not sure whether to stop you or walk you to the truck. Lauren whispered my name like a break. Tom lifted a hand and thought better. Mrs. Alvarez touched my arm. "You don't have to leave," she said gently. "I do," I answered. "I won't stand where my life is a prop." Older men will hear the years behind that line. I grabbed my keys, felt the familiar weight, and walked. The climax wasn't the door closing, though I closed it softly on the way out. It was the motor starting clean on the first turn, like a promise kept. I drove to a motel with carpets that didn't complain and a clerk who minded her business. In the quiet of a rented room, I thought, draw the line, then honor it with your feet. I rented a room at a motel off I-35, the kind with a sturdy lock and a bed that doesn't lie for you. The carpet was clean enough, the ice machine obedient. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the mattress, like it might give me a verdict. It didn't. Men my age know that cheap peace can still be peace. I stared at the popcorn ceiling and said the line out loud. "You drew it. Now walk it." No drama, just a sentence I owed myself. I showered too hot, watched steam erase the mirror, and felt something quiet return, like a spare key found in a drawer. I slept in a straight line, no negotiation with the pillow, no listening for a second person's weather. The climax came at 5:55 a.m. when the alarm didn't have to argue with me. I stood, laced my boots, and realized I didn't need courage, just direction. I had both. By 8 a.m., I was at the Williamson County Courthouse, coffee in one hand, folder in the other. The building had that government smell. Paper, polish, patience. A clerk pointed me to the right window without making anything harder than it had to be. I filled out what they gave me. Block letters steady, middle name spelled right for once. Men 3065 will understand. Sometimes you just need a counter, a pen, and a step-by-step. It felt like a job site. Permit first, demolition later. I asked 2 questions, not 3, because clarity is a courtesy. The stamp hit with a flat thud that sounded exactly like a decision becoming real. The climax was ordinary on purpose, my signature where it counted. No speech, no scene, just the truth written down. When I walked back out into the Texas sun, it felt brighter, not kinder. Brighter like a work light you flip on before you start cutting. Paperwork is still work. Different materials, same rules. Measure twice, write once, keep copies like you'll thank yourself later. I sat in the truck and made a checklist on a yellow pad. Storage unit, boxes, change of address, bank, utilities. Men who've ever fixed a fence know the comfort of numbered steps. You don't have to want it to do it. You only have to keep going. I called the storage place near University Boulevard, reserved a unit that would embarrass a past version of me, and decided embarrassment is cheaper than regret. The climax was a small prayer I've said 100 times. Be a builder, not a breaker. Then I put the pad away and drove. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Out of habit, I reached for the radio, then let the quiet win. Every mile I didn't explain myself felt like a mile gained. There's a dignity in errands when they're pointed at freedom. At the storage office, the manager handed me a lock and a clipboard like we were trading baseball cards. I bought boxes, tape, a marker thick enough to shout. Unit B-17 smelled like concrete and second chances. I pulled the door up and listened to the rattle, a useful noise. Men my age collect these simple satisfactions: hinges that work, lights that come on, labels that make tomorrow easier. I wrote on the first box, kitchen, mine. On the second, tools, all. The marker squeaked with purpose. The climax was practical. Inventory is mercy. If you've ever moved a house, you know the heartbreak is smaller when the lids are straight and the stacks are even. I loaded the truck slow enough to keep what I still owned from bruising. Then I turned back toward the neighborhood I'd helped mow and wave at for 10 years, ready to walk in without asking if it was a good time. Megan had set the table like a holiday, chargers we only used when company needed proof we tried. The kitchen smelled like lemon and garlic, the kind of welcome that forgives most sins. She wore the summer porch dress. Light found her on purpose. "You're early," she said, as if there was a schedule I'd broken. "I'm on time," I answered, and put the first box down. Older adults know this part, the polished stage set when the play's already over. She lifted a lid. Chicken piccata, bright with capers, butter glossy enough to start a rumor. "Sit," she said gently. I stayed standing. The climax was the distance, 3 feet of tile that felt like a state line. It's a strange thing to be fed and not be bought. I kept my hands at my sides, not clenched, not open, just mine. "We can talk," she offered. "We will," I said, "after I finish what I started." She reached for plates. I reached for tape. "I made your favorite," she said, and I believed her. It looked perfect. I was hungry. I said, "I'm full." It wasn't a performance. It was the truth. Some appetites stop when a different one finally wakes up. Men 30 to 65 know this pivot, the day you don't grab the easy comfort because it keeps you in the same room. I boxed what was mine without bruising what was ours. Photos stayed. The ugly lamp stayed out of sheer principle. She hovered, trying to decide if kindness could buy an hour. The climax was choosing a tool over a fork. Tape whined across cardboard, and the sound steadied me like a metronome. "We can eat later," she said. "Maybe," I answered, not unkind. I wrote bedroom closet on the lid and carried it past the table we both knew was a stage. The food cooled. My resolve did not. At the hallway, she stepped in front of me, hands on the door jamb like a goalie with good form. "You're doing this over one bad joke?" The old me would have explained the difference between a spark and a slow fire. This version kept it short. "Not one joke," I said. 10 years of small cuts that added up. Men who've lived through a season of nitpicks know the arithmetic. It's never the last straw. It's the bail. She shook her head, eyes glossed. "We can fix it. We can fix the way you talk to people who feed you," I said, voice level. "We can fix habits, not this paperwork." The climax wasn't sharp. It was steady. I stepped to the side. She stepped back. You can love a person and still move your feet. I carried the box out into the light that said afternoon, not crisis. The hinge didn't squeak. Neither did I. "God, you're cruel," she said, finally letting heat join the room. I set the box down and faced her, palms empty. "No," I answered. "I'm clear. Men my age understand the swap that happens in an argument. Clarity gets renamed as meanness, so you'll trade it back for confusion. I didn't. I respected you, I added. I still do. I don't respect what we've been practicing. She searched my face for the old soft spot, the one that negotiated against me. It wasn't open. So that's it? She asked. That's it, I said, the way you say a level is true when the bubble sits dead center. The climax arrived in my chest. Not the hallway, no rush, no shake, just the feeling of a man who finally believes his own sentences. I picked up the box. She didn't move. The house watched two adults do something hard without breaking picture frames. I packed slow on purpose. Shirts I wear thin, boots that earn their scars, tools that remember my hands. I left the album, the one that belonged to both of us, and therefore neither today. I left the ugly lamp to keep it honest. Men 65 will hear the sermon in that. Take what's yours, don't wound what's shared. In the garage, I chose only what I'd use, not what would prove a point. The smell of cut pine clung to the air, stubborn and good. The climax was a small mercy. I caught myself almost taking something just to take it and didn't. There's a difference between leaving and looting your own life. I labeled the last box garage, essentials, shut the truck bed, and felt the simple rightness of weight distributed well. I walked back in for one more look, not to ask the walls for permission, but to thank them for keeping the rain out while they did. From the kitchen, her voice rose for the first time. So, you're ending all this over one joke? I stood in the doorway with my keys and gave her the last honest thing I owed. Yesterday was the first honest thing you've said in months, I said. Not loud, not soft, just accurate. Men my age know how rare it is to land a sentence you won't regret later. The climax was the door itself. I closed it. Not a slam, not a whisper. A finish. The latch seated. The house kept standing. I walked to the truck and started it. First turn. Clean. No music. No victory lap. Just the road and a plan that didn't wobble under its own weight. As I pulled away, I didn't look back at the windows. Some scenes don't deserve a second take. Ahead, the motel sign blinked the same word it always blinks. Vacancy. I had space. Now I'd fill it with a life that fits. 2 weeks later, the lawyer called. Voice even. Paperwork tidy. Things are moving, he said, which is lawyer for be ready. I was. Men my age keep a go bag for ordinary emergencies. Flashlight. Batteries, a folder with the names that matter. He walked me through the next steps, signatures, timelines, a few choices disguised as forms. I took notes on a yellow pad because a yellow pad never dies when the Wi-Fi hiccups. After we hung up, I stood in my quiet kitchen and felt the room checking if I'd flinch. I didn't. The climax was physical, my shoulders dropping like a 2x4 finally seated in the bracket. I wasn't outrunning a fire anymore. I was following a plan. I brewed coffee and drank it black. No click, no ritual beyond heat and swallow. Outside, the trash truck did its Friday sermon. Lift, dump, done. I took the cans in and thought, good, keep it simple. The next call would be scheduling the mediator. The mediator's office looked like every neutral room you've ever sat in. Soft chairs, safe plants, a clock that doesn't tick loud enough to annoy. We signed in, sat down, spoke in sentences built for paperwork. Sell the house? Yes. Split proceeds? Down the middle. We didn't rehearse. We didn't need to. Some endings are just arithmetic. Men 30 to 65 know the relief of a clean ledger. Megan kept her eyes on the folder. I kept mine on the bullet points. No one raised a voice. No one tried to win the story. The climax was a pen sliding across a final line without trembling. When we stood, the mediator said, "You two made that easy." I almost laughed. Easy is not the word, but simple can be a kind of mercy. In the parking lot, Megan said, "Thank you for not making it ugly." "You're welcome," I answered. Not bitter, not warm, just accurate. Then I got in my truck and drove. I found a small rental with a decent garage, white walls, concrete floor, and a door that rolled up without complaining. The place had that faint smell of new paint and old decisions. I signed the lease, took the keys, and did the first thing men like me do. I bought hooks. You hang a life before you fill it. I set up a workbench. Oh, soy. Plugged in a radio and let the room know it had a job. The kitchen was simple. Stove that works, fridge that doesn't hum. I put 3 plates in a cabinet and felt rich. The climax was my first night there, when I slept without curating my breathing for someone else. Morning came honest. Sun on the garage floor looked like permission. I brewed coffee and drank it from a chipped mug that fit my hand better than any apology. For once, the quiet didn't ask for anything. It just sat there, clean, waiting to be used. Tom texted at 5:15 a.m. "Jim, men our age don't waste words before daylight." I met him by the squat rack, the air thick with old metal and new resolve. He spotted, I lifted, we traded silence, the way you trade tools. No speeches, just help. "Burn off the spare voltage," he said between sets. "You're wired hot." He wasn't wrong. We worked in rounds. Push, breathe, reset. Sweat is honest. Doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate. The climax was the last rep I didn't think I had. I racked the bar and felt the kind of tired that lets a man sit still without a storm in his head. In the parking lot, Tom clapped my shoulder. "Keep the weight moving forward," he said. "Don't let it roll back on you." That's older man gospel. I drove home with forearms humming and made eggs in a pan that didn't stick. The day felt like it might take orders again. I was ready to give them. Work surged. I said yes to more jobs than was wise and lined them up like fence posts. Denise noticed. "You're chasing something," she said, flipping a folder shut with a practice snap. "I'm building something," I answered. She tilted her head. "Same motion, different fuel. Don't run out." In 30 and 65 know that warning. It's love disguised as management. I tightened my system, clearer scopes, cleaner starts, no heroic nights half working on the couch. I kept office hours like a promise and left when I said I would. The climax was a small victory at a job site. Crew in rhythm, materials on time, a customer who nodded instead of nitpicked. That nod carried me all afternoon. Back in the truck, I let the seat catch me and didn't open a single email at a red light. Productivity isn't penance, it's a tool. I'd used it as both. Now I was building a life that didn't wobble when you leaned on it. Chris dragged me to a bar with decent wings and music that thinks it's better than it is. "Non-negotiable," he said, sliding a basket across the table. "You are not going to sit in a box by yourself all year." I rolled my eyes and ate anyway. We watched a game we didn't care about and pretended we did. That's friendship. Shared noise so the quiet doesn't get ideas. He asked nothing big, offered nothing dumb. "How's the garage?" "Honest." "Good." Men our age understand. We talk in tools and schedules because the feelings ride inside those sentences. The climax was simple. Laughing at something small and realizing it wasn't rented humor. It belonged to me. I left smelling like fryer oil and feeling lighter than the grease should allow. In the lot, he said, "Text if you tilt." "Same," I said. We meant it. Back home, the garage light clicked on and didn't flicker. That counted as a win. A week later, Lauren said it over a beer like she was setting a glass down softly. "Megan says you were cruel." I let the words sit where she put them. "I was clear," I said, and watched the difference climb into the space between us. Men 30 to 65 know how often that trade gets demanded. Hand over clarity, take back confusion, call it love. Lauren nodded slowly, her eyes less certain than her voice. "She's hurt," she added. "I believe that," I answered. "I'm not a villain. I'm also not her audience." The climax was keeping my tone steady. No counterattack, no reheated grievances, just the facts. She took a breath, then changed the subject to the team in the fourth inning, a switch was merciful for both of us. Later, driving home, I thought about how many times I'd tried to manage how people saw me. Not tonight. Reputation's a leaky boat if you keep patching it with other people's tape. Word drifted through the circle the way news always does. Megan moved north, closer to her sister. A new apartment, different grocery store, new routine. I didn't dig for details. Men my age learn that curiosity can be a form of trespassing. I wished her steadiness in my head, then got back to work. The house we'd sold appeared online with new photos, staged pillows, fresh flowers. It looked like a stranger wearing my shirt. That's how it goes. The climax was gentle. A text from Tom's fiancée inviting me to a backyard dinner. Proof that life folds you in if you let it. I brought a simple side and left with leftovers I didn't earn, which is how kindness works around here. Back at my place, I set the container in the fridge next to the honest food. Eggs, butter, milk. No mystery sauces, no promises I couldn't keep. The garage waited, patient as always. I didn't check her social. I didn't ask Lauren for updates. A boundary that lets you peek isn't a boundary. It's a fence with a ladder leaning on it. Men 30 to 65 know the temptation. Just to see. I kept my eyes on my own yard. I mowed on Saturdays, not because the grass demanded it, but because rhythm calms a man's head. I replaced a porch light that had flickered too long and didn't brag to anyone. The climax was a quiet pride I hadn't felt in a while. The kind that shows up when you honor promises no one else can measure. In the evening, I sat on a camp chair in the garage doorway and listened to a ball game on low, not for the score, but for the comfort of competent voices. Somewhere, a neighbor laughed. Somewhere else, a screen door thumped. My phone stayed face down and silent. A good silence, not the kind that punishes. I rolled the old bike onto the stand and decided it had waited long enough. New plugs, a cleaned carb, fuel line checked, cables adjusted like guitar strings. Men who wrench know the prayer you say with your hands. Please turn, please catch, please hold. I kicked once, twice, then pushed the starter. The engine coughed, cleared, settled into a low, honest rumble. The sound filled the garage without asking forgiveness. That was the climax. Metal agreeing with itself. I let it run a minute. Felt the vibration climb up my arms, and smiled the first real smile I'd owned in a season. I shut it down and stood there with the kind of quiet that doesn't itch. I texted Chris a picture, just the bike and my boots. He sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. Perfect. I washed my hands, the grease refusing a spot or two like a souvenir, and thought, this is what moving on feels like when it finally sticks. At Tom's birthday cookout, I met Claire Bennett over a paper plate and a borrowed chair. She asked what I do, not like a test, more like a neighbor. I build things that still stand, I said, and meant more than lumber. She smiled at the answer the way people do when they're listening for the right reasons. We traded small details, where the best coffee hides, why some towns feel like they were drawn with a pencil instead of a crayon. No sparks, no violins, just two adults with the kind of ease that doesn't ask for applause. Men my age know that calm is its own invitation. Later, by the cooler, she said, "Nice to meet you, Jack." And somehow it felt formal in a good way, like a handshake that fits. The climax wasn't a number or a promise. It was noticing I didn't speed up my sentences to be liked. I talked. She heard. That was plenty. A week later, we crossed paths again at Tom's. Leftover cake. Mismatched forks. Good timing. Claire laughed at a joke and then said, "I hate small talk," the way some folks say they hate cilantro. "Good," I said. "I hate lying." It landed between us like a clean plank. We stepped onto it without wobbling. We talked about jobs that take from your knees and give back to your hands, about books we've started twice and finishes we still owe ourselves. Men 30-65 will recognize the relief of talking like a grown-up with another grown-up. No audition, no sales pitch. She didn't ask about Megan. I didn't bring it up. The conversation stayed present tense, which is rarer than it should be. The climax was simple. We ran out of time before we ran out of words. On the way out, she said, "See you around." "Count on it," I said, meaning maybe I'd finally learned to let good things breathe. I didn't ask for Claire's number, not because I'm proud, because I'm careful. There's a pace that respects what just ended and what might begin. Men my age know how expensive rushing can be. Instead, I kept living where my boots were. Workbench, job sites, the garage light that comes on without drama. If she wanted a breadcrumb, I left the kind adults understand. I told Tom I'd come to the next get-together and bring the ribs. He nodded like a foreman who appreciates follow-through. Some evenings I'd catch myself checking my phone for nothing, then set it face down and pick up a wrench. The climax was trusting momentum without manhandling it. When you've spent years performing, choosing not to perform feels like a new muscle waking up. I didn't script a future to calm my nerves. I sanded a board, put it in place, and let the fit decide. If Claire and I intersect again, we will. If not, I'm still steady. On Saturday, I volunteered with a crew building a wheelchair ramp for a vet across town. Sun on shoulders, sawdust on forearms, those are the kinds of sentences my body understands. We measured, cut, countersank screws so they wouldn't bite later. The man's wife brought lemonade like a blessing. "You saved us months," she said. I told her we saved ourselves too, Mint. And 30-65 know that service can be a pressure release valve you don't have to explain. Sweat tells the truth. Silence agrees. The ramp took shape, level, sturdy, ready for whatever wheels would ask of it. I wrote the load rating on the underside where no one would see, a small habit of respect. The climax came when he rolled onto it for the first time and didn't hesitate. Wait, meet, purpose. Purpose, meet, wait. We packed up without speeches, just nods that said we'd sleep right. On the ride home, the truck felt lighter than the lumber ever did. Sunday morning settled into a rhythm at a coffee shop in Georgetown. Same stool by the window, black coffee, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own brakes stop squeaking. The owner learned my order and my disinterest in flavored syrups. I brought a notebook and wrote short lists that didn't boss me around. Groceries, call Tom, replace porch bulb. Men my age thrive on simple lists that get done. I watched families herd kids to church, teenagers invent outfits, and one old dog invent new naps. Sometimes I thought about buying a better mug, then kept the chipped one on purpose. The climax was how ordinary it felt to be okay. No test, no trial, just a morning that didn't need rescuing. When another regular nodded, I nodded back. We didn't trade names, we traded proof. You can build a life from small, reliable parts. Outside, a cyclist clipped in and pushed off. Inside, I took a slow sip and stayed put. I thought about Megan less like a headline and more like a chapter, part of the book, not the whole story. No revenge fantasy, no late-night inventory of wrongs, just gratitude for what taught me to draw lines in paint, not pencil. Men 30-65 understand that forgiveness isn't approval, it's weight you set down so your hands can lift something better. She taught me where I disappear if I'm not careful. I taught myself how to return. The garage helped. The gym helped. Conversations that didn't require translation helped. If a memory arrived, I let it sit, then let it leave without paying rent. The climax was learning I could respect the woman I married and admit she doesn't live in my life anymore. Two truths. No argument. On a quiet night, I raised a glass of water to that fact, like a toast you give yourself when no one's watching. Then I turned off the light and slept on purpose. Every so often, I'd think of that fall festival mug, the one I won guessing candy corn, the one that went missing somewhere between then and now. It bothered me less than you'd expect. Life misplaces things and replaces them with others. I drank from a chipped cup that sits right in my hand, scar and all. Men my age know the comfort of tools and dishes that aren't pretty but refuse to quit. I kept the chip turned out, like a little honesty baked into ceramic. The climax was seeing the metaphor and not abusing it. Not everything is a lesson. Sometimes a mug is a mug and a good morning is a good morning. I rinsed it, left it by the sink to dry, and went back to the garage. Out there, measurements don't lie and boards forgive you if you fix your cut. I like the kind of day that expects competence and pays in quiet. It fits me now. Sometimes, after the first sip, the old click shows up. I don't chase it or hide it. It's just a small sound that says, I'm here. No one complains because no one's grading me on noises anymore. Men 30-65 will recognize the relief of ordinary quirks returning when judgment leaves the room. I hear that click like a metronome, keeping time with the life I'm building. Work, friends, the gym, a ramp that holds, a bike that starts, a porch light that finally stays on. The climax is small and daily, choosing what to give your attention to and watching attention grow it like sun on a tomato plant. If someone visits and mentions the sound, I'll smile and pour them coffee anyway. The cup will be chipped. The conversation won't be. In the background, the radio might mumble baseball. In the foreground, I'll keep breathing the way I do, loud enough to count as living, quiet enough to hear myself think. Here's what I finally understood. You don't have to win an argument to know you're respected. Respect sounds like reasonable quiet and looks like follow-through. It's a door you can close without a speech and open without a script. Men my age learn late that clarity is cheaper than penance and pays better too. I stopped issuing press releases about my choices. I made them, owned them, and let the results speak. Friends showed up. Work held, sleep returned. The climax is inward, a steady hum where the panic used to be. I don't need applause for boundaries that keep me honest. I don't need a jury to grade my tone. If someone asks what changed, I'll say, I started treating my time like it belonged to me. Then I'll hand them a wrench or a fork depending on the hour and get back to it. The line stayed painted. The man who drew it finally learned to walk it. Here's the payoff. I keep my lines painted where I can see them, and I go where I'm heard. If love shows up again, It won't meet a man begging for permission. It'll meet a builder who knows how quiet he wants his nights and how loud he'll celebrate when it's earned. I won't trade clarity for company. I won't rent out my dignity by the hour. The garage stays honest. The porch light stays on, and friends who knock know the door opens and locks for a reason. Some mornings, the old click follows the first sip. I let it. It's a metronome, not a verdict. If somebody at my table calls it irritating, I'll smile, push back my chair, and point to the doorway that's open. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're invitations to bring your best. I drew the line. I walked it. And from here on, I'll keep my time, my word, and my peace in plain sight.